when I think of intention, I think of what am I casting out of my view to look at more wholly, not holy, but wholly.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Intention podcast. It is your host, Doug, here with your host, Ronnie. Ronnie, how are you? How's it going?
I'm good, dude. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. We are halfway through the week. At the time of recording this, at the time you're watching this, it's different.
Be halfway through the week by the time you're watching it, but it's a different week.
True. That's a good point. If you're watching, I hope you have been having a great week. I hope your January is off to a great start. If for some reason you are partaking in our January challenge, which if you don't know what that is, feel free to check out our first episode, our actionable takeaways from 2023. And while you're at it, you just click the subscribe button and just see what that does for you. We appreciate you being here either way. And speaking of the challenge, we will jump in real quick, but this will be a little bit of a shorter episode where we talked about it, I think, on the first episode that we kind of have a rotational cadence each month, this being the second recording of the month. And this will be breaking down and defining a keyword with some intention-based or value-based tools and rhythms to share for you to implement into your day-to-day. So excited to get into that today. And I think I gave it away that the word for today is intention. Good first word, considering it's the name of our podcast and the word for 2024 for me. So we're going to break that down today. First, we're going to talk about how this monthly challenge is going. For those that don't know, if you haven't watched, our monthly challenge for the month of January is no alcohol. So dry January, but it's our hard mode reset. No alcohol. For me, no candy, but for both of us, no eating out, fast food, restaurant, that kind of thing. A little bit of savings going in there. What else? Exercise every day. Exercise every day. So that's been fun. That tells you which part of the challenge I've been slacking on a little bit.
Okay.
But I'm just going to let you give your update first, and then I'll talk about how it's going for me. But how has your challenge been going? Is there any areas that you've been struggling with, or how's it been doing?
Man, honestly, I feel like I'm doing pretty okay. When we talk about this being a hard mode reset, like it's not crazy hard, right? Like even when we say it, like don't eat out, don't do drugs. Not that we were doing it like drugs, but don't drink and don't and exercise every day. Like some people are like, yeah, bro, that's just my lifestyle. That's kind of the point. Like we kind of want to make it so that's, or at least for me, I won't speak for you, Doug, but I think that that's kind of the trajectory that we're both on. Is I would like for that to be my normal lifestyle, but what happens? You get caught up in, I'm really stressed out at work. I'm feeling, under the weather. I'm going to skip the workout today, or I'm going to, it was a really stressful week at work. I'm going to go get a 6-pack of beer on my way home or whatever it is. And these are just things that have made me weak in the past, right? Like when I look over the course of 2023, it was a great year. But there were moments where I just really diminished myself where I didn't have to. And I think that that's every year heading into January, I do a dry January for that reason, because we all drink a lot around the holidays, or at least most people I know tend to get into it a little bit over the holidays. But my challenge is going pretty good, actually. I'm as far as the challenge is concerned, it's the 10th of January. I haven't slipped up once. I've exercised every day. Nice. I haven't eaten out. I haven't drank. I also partake in smoking a little bit of legal THC here in the state of Texas every once in a while. And I've refrained from that. I have it in a drawer over there, and I haven't done that either, just because I know that kind of spirals me. I wake up groggy the next day. I don't want to work out, whatever. I've had some days where I, wake up late or whatever, and I have to push my workout to the evening, and I'm privileged to be able to do that, or fortunate to be able to do that. But I think that's going to kind of go into what we're talking about a little later, but it has formed it is the definition of my intention right now. Is that's basically the baseline. It goes family, my job, and then making sure that I'm kind of living in alignment with this challenge is my intention right now. So it's going pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Yesterday I had a crazy hard workout. It's called a Norwegian 4x4. It's something that Rhonda Patrick talks about on her podcast.
Crazy.
But so basically it's 4 minutes. It's 4 sets of 4-minute intervals of running. Well, it can be any cardio exercise. You guys are going to get this free tidbit. And I would recommend Rhonda Patrick's Found My Fitness podcast for the exact mitochondrial benefits to it. But basically, like, the best middle distance and endurance runners in the world are using this workout. It's 4 sets of 4 minutes. You start at around an RPE 7 or 8. That's rate of perceived exertion 8. So for me, that's like I start at like a 7.5 mile per hour pace. You run for 4 minutes, and then you take 3 minutes off. What I was doing, because I'd like to add a little bit of intensity, is halfway between each round. So at the 2-minute mark, I would add just an increment of speed. So if I was at 7.5, I would go to 7.6 for the back 2 minutes. And then for the final rep, this is not recommended anywhere, but every 30 seconds, I increased either the incline or the speed by 1 increment. So I was going up by 0.5 incline or 0.1 speed increment, 0.1 miles per hour. Dude, torched me. My heart rate touched the 180s, which does not happen when I run, unless I'm doing like straight up like Tabata or sprints. But my legs felt relatively like good at the end of the workout. So it was good. I feel good. My heart rate was like 46 or 47 this morning, which means I'm pretty much recovered from it already. So it's like, it was only 16 minutes of work, of like real work, but it torched my heart rate at a level that I wouldn't otherwise get. So that's a little freebie for the listeners if you guys are into fitness like us.
Yeah.
Doug, how you doing?
Not that good. No, I'm definitely gonna have to run that one back and watch that. But it's the exercise thing for me. Everything else has been great. No alcohol, no eating out. All that's been fine. Waking up early was like part of it, because me waking up early was where I was telling myself that it was going to be the time that I had to exercise, to work out. And what I will say in this whole, like, setting this challenge for ourselves, but then slipping up on that part, not that I haven't exercised at all, I just haven't done it every day, is thinking about, you set these challenges and stuff for yourself. And then if you don't fulfill every single part of the challenge every single day, I don't think that you should feel like a failure, right? That you should be super hard on yourself, down on yourself. I suck. And one of the things we're doing at work as well is this dry January challenge. So like, I signed up for it because I was like, I'm doing it anyways. And one of the things I put in there was, in our team's channel, was like, hey, for those that are partaking in this, and for those watching or listening, if you have your own challenge for the month or for the year, your resolution, all that good stuff, February is usually when people fall off the quickest. And I think a lot of that has to do with slipping up once or twice and then just saying, well, I messed up, so that's it, I'm just going to throw in the towel. And that's where I'm like, let me not catch myself in that kind of mindset, because I don't want to apply that to if I got really stressed out and went out and got a tall boy and crushed it. Because if that happened, I don't want it to happen, but if that happened and I said, well, I messed up, so I guess I'm just going to drink the rest of the month, then what would that do, as opposed to, dang, I slipped up, I said I wasn't going to drink, I drank, but tomorrow, reset, I'm going to do it again. And that's how I've been taking the whole exercise thing, specifically exercise with this example, because it's like, you don't want to push your body if your body's not in a place that needs to be pushed. And that might be an excuse that I'm giving myself, but since we started the challenge, I have had very suboptimal sleep, like 3 hours max because of my son and him waking up in the middle of the night, or for different reasons that I'll end up being up later than I would like, or waking up earlier than even 5:30, which is when I set myself to sleep. So I feel my body telling me like, you cannot run miles today. You cannot lift today. You're going to make yourself sick. And there are other things that you need your body for. So today's not a day to exercise. So I'm saying, okay, I'll do that, and we'll start it. We'll try again the next day. But intention is such a great word for us to get into, and we'll get into it right now, because it's really reflecting at the end of the day, like, were you intentional about all your decisions, including your sleep, like how your rest? And that's where I think it really is that it's not that I didn't want to exercise. It's not that I was like, I have the opportunity to and I'm not going to, but I wasn't intentional about getting uh, a sufficient amount of rest so that I was in a place that I could exercise, if that makes sense.
Right.
And it maybe subconsciously I'm like, if I sleep 3 hours, then I'm not going to be able to work out. But that's neither here nor there. So we're going to get into this. Is it called etymology?
Yeah, the etymology of the word.
The etymology of the
and
word.
intentions etymology is actually pretty boring. Like, I was hoping it would have this like big epic story, and
some
it would,
like Greek
rooted in like God and logos, but it's actually not really that. But
It's actually not.
I'll let you explain it.
Sure, yeah. So it's of Latin origin, as are most words, even though Latin is a dead language. But the etymology of intention, it's from Latin origin intentio, which means purpose. So finding that out, I was like, okay, intention, purpose, lining up, feels good, and can be dated as far back. I'm citing, but can be dated as far back as the early 1300s, from the French. It was adopted by the French from the Latin, and I'm not gonna be able to pronounce this properly, but intenden is how the French adopted it, or adapted it, and it's adapted it into a. Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah,
that's credible. Thanks.
In fact,
I'm okay.
you said it so well. I'm like it almost feels like you appropriated, to be honest. But we'll talk about it offline.
Well, I'm actually a quarter French.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Wow, that's probably more than I am, actually. Even though my last name is French.
Yeah.
Do they know our last names? I don't think so. We'll let it be a mystery for a little while. That's the Patreon.
I was gonna say, who's they?
Yeah.
Oh, the listener. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. That is for the Patreon. So French. My last name is not French. By far, it's not French. But
You could
the
make
French.
it pretty French sounding, though. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
The French adapted the word from Latin "entenden," which is a verb meaning to direct one's attention to, pay attention, or give heed. So thinking about intention and it being a verb is like directing your attention towards something, right? So that's the etymology of it. I think the value here is talking about what it means for us and how we use that word on a day to day. What tools do we implement? What rhythms do we have in place to make the most of it, and to have kind of a system put in place? So I personally feel like I've been talking more than I'd like to for a stretch. So I'm going to let you jump in, and not let you, because like,
Yeah.
you don't need my permission, but the word intention for you from a tool rhythm perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
What does that mean for you?
Yeah. So it's actually, I love that obviously, I think at some level we all kind of know that it means purpose, or maybe we don't. I don't know. I can't speak on behalf of other people, but I think that I love the fact that it kind of comes back to this idea of purpose, in alignment. Like, it's like you can have bad. What do we mean when we say someone has bad intentions? It means that they probably aren't aligned with like this like good whole purpose. I think you can get as deep as saying like, what is, if we talk about it through like a biblical worldview, what is to sin? I mean, to sin is to miss the mark, right? Anybody that's listened to like Jordan Peterson has heard this spiel a million times, but it's
Mm.
like you're missing the mark. You're not aiming at the right things. And I think that in a lot of ways, it all comes down to it. A lot of times people think about intention almost as conflated with ambition or with vision, which I think is a positive thing because I think you need intention for both of those things to make them work healthily. But when I think of intention, I think of limitation. I think of narrowing my scope in life. So
Mm.
there's a saying that limitation brings life. This is especially true if you're a religious thinker or if you have some sort of, maybe dogma is the wrong word, but some sort of, spiritual covenant that you uphold. Like that limitation brings you a spiritual life. And I think it's the same regardless of if you're spiritual or religious or not. When I think of intention, I think of what am I casting out of my view to look at more wholly, not holy, but wholly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to me it has been the best working definition, especially as, we'll talk a little bit about our tools and kind of things that you can do to better improve your intention or better live it out or manifest it in your life. But as I've done those things in the past, I've found that it's been continually my scope has expanded. Oh, I have all this more capacity. I'm living this intentional life, but I really wasn't living intentionally because I was adding a scope of things. The reality is we're only human. We can't pay attention to a million things at once, and we can be as ambitious as we think we might be able to. But at the end of the day, without intention, you're going to get a mile wide, not a mile deep. And I think that the real value in life comes from getting a mile deep. So intention to me means limitation. That's how I would answer
That's
it.
cool because I even seeing that in our outline, like I didn't even interpret it like that, which is really cool. It's for me it's me. I think about lessons learned and stuff like these takeaways that we talked about last week from 2023, and I had this realization, and then I started thinking about all of my role models and people that I look up to. And the consistent thing with all of them is that they had a very similar moment. So it was really cool for me to have this like realization or recognition and be like, oh, I think that's like the tipping point. And that's what intention means to me is I feel like there was a day last year that it was in the middle of the day. It's not like I woke up, but it was in the middle of the day that I was like, I am, I am tired of living in the passenger seat of this life. And I'm tired of life happening and me reacting to it. I think intention means being in the driver's seat or however you want to take the bull by the horns, however you want to say it. But really having that feeling of like,
Agency.
I end every day wishing that more was accomplished, wishing that it happened differently. I am awake at night. I lay up awake at night thinking about all the things I could have done better or done more of. And I know I'm not the only person that struggled and still struggles with it. But that to me is what intention means. Like what it encompasses is you're waking up every single day saying, I'm in charge of what's going to happen today. And I think when we talk about like the tools and rhythms that we've put in place, it starts with self that self realization or that self actualization of like, I'm not going to let life just happen and me have to respond retroactively. I'm going to have the proactivity and the intention to accomplish the things that I want to set out to. And in a way, it does limit that. I think it does take a lot of the noise and ambiguity and stuff in your head of, oh my God, I have to do this. Something pops up, you get a text message, someone looks at you the wrong way, and you're like, oh, I have to worry about this now, and your brain is switching all over the place. with you, without intention, or with you just being reactive to everything that goes on in your day and in your life. So that intention is like, these things are going to happen, and at this point they're noise compared to what I have set to be the priority.
Yeah.
And it just frees up space for you to just focus on what matters to you. So what do
Yeah.
you think are the rules and rhythms that you've put in place based on that definition that you think people could listen to and be like, oh my God, I need to apply that?
Yeah. I think, I'll say one thing before I get into that, but like combining your definition, which is more of like an agency definition, and my definition, which is more of a limitation definition. I think it's actually,
Mm.
you can sum it up in like this metaphor. If you go from having no personal agency in your life, and then all of a sudden you have this moment, which is honestly, I feel like that happens more than it doesn't
Several
for
times,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, like it happens as like a flash moment of realization of epiphany. Then it doesn't. Like it's
Mm.
very odd to have like that gradual shift.
That's the
But
word,
it's like
epiphany.
it's like the equivalent of like you are a cog in the wheel worker in a factory for your entire career, and then one day you're like 27 years old and you have this epiphany and you're like, I should be the CEO. Where do I start? And then just start trying to
Yes.
manage the entire factory. You're going to have
Yeah.
no idea what to do. Start with, hey, how about let's get promoted to like foreman or
Foreman.
line.
Yeah.
I don't know anything
Yeah, no,
about working
foreman's
in a
right.
factory, but like, yeah, like let me get promoted to that. And then I'll have a little bit more of an expanded view that I can narrow my focus on. Or maybe my idea of narrowed focus comes down to a larger capacity, and what's narrow to me might be wide to a previous version of myself. So I think that's a great working definition. Both of ours are pretty sufficient, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with my best point first. And by best point, I mean that these are this point specifically in this tool has been one that I've crafted and iterated on for the last 8 years, and that is using my
Oh.
calendar, but not just using my calendar, going on like complete droid mode. So I'm someone who I take on a lot at work, and by the end of the weekend, I'm usually feeling really refreshed and like I can take on the world. So I've ended up in the past over scheduling myself. And what happens, I end up, like you talked about in the beginning of the episode, I feel like a failure by like Wednesday, when I'm trying to schedule, oh, this day I'm going to read this book and I'm going to do this thing. And then I'm going to talk to the CEO about all my business ideas, and I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to work out, and then I'm going to do jiu-jitsu, and then I'm going to sleep, and then I'm going to wake up at 4:30 a.m. It's like, I will do that Monday and Tuesday. And then
Yeah.
Wednesday I will sleep through my alarm and be late to work and feel like a failure and just be disheveled through the day. So what I do, I think it's, in my mind, it's better to be intentional. It's better to only have to be intentional for about 2 hours out of your week, maybe
Mm.
with some pockets here and there. And the way that I've done that, because intentionality actually takes a lot of work. So the way that I've done that is I block out about 2 hours on Sundays or whatever day of the week it is. It could be Mondays, it could be Fridays, it could be Sundays, Saturdays, whatever. Wouldn't really make much sense to do it on a Wednesday unless you were like off of work on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But I block out 2 hours of work. I take a look at my Trello board that I have that has all of my roles that I fulfill in my life. For me, these are husband, podcaster and creator, sales professional because I work in sales. I'm an athlete. I'm trying to get closer to God. And then I just have like some administrative stuff. Like I have to be the administrator of my life, obviously. I look at those 6 roles and I say, okay, what are my goals for these things? What progress am I making so far? What would need to be true this week for the goals that I've set annually and quarterly to be true at the time that I get there? Then I plan based off of that. Once I've planned what needs to happen for those things, the rest of my calendar I look at as I can do whatever I want within this calendar. Usually that means leisure. Usually it means going to a hockey game. It means playing video games. It means getting a cigar with friends. It doesn't mean reading a book a week. It doesn't mean writing 1,000 words per day. unless that is the intent that I've set for my life at the time, because then I will remove other things and other ambitions that I would have in that exact time period. You're going to hear a lot of different influencers telling you things that aren't in alignment with that. The reality is these people don't have full-time jobs. And I've been an ambitious person for a long time. I think that I am growing in my intentionality and in my capacity, but I also think that there's a lot of room to enjoy life, to be a good partner, to have fun. And that starts with planning your big rocks first, but then and executing on those like an absolute robot. If it's in my calendar, I'm doing it. It's non-negotiable 90% of the time. But what's also in my calendar is a Saturday afternoon playing Shadow of War, killing Ronk the Life Drinker in freaking Gondor. Like that's also on my calendar. So I think a lot of people, they think it's mutually exclusive to be like this hyper focused, hyper ambitious, intentional person, or this person who's like relaxing and enjoys video games and enjoys watching sports or whatever. No, it's the same thing. Or you can be both of those things, and you can do it all through the mechanism that is the calendar. So that's my tool. That's my first tool. It's my longest point by far, and it's worked pretty well for me. I'm able to kind of wash my hands of the day at the end of each day, 80% of the time, 90% of the time. And it's been particularly helpful as we've gone through this challenge and as we've kind of worked on making this podcast better.
Yeah, that's really cool. Who are you smoking cigars with? Without me?
Oh,
is my
yeah,
question.
bro. I know. I'm sorry. Well, you live. What do you live? 1,200 miles away from me. Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. I could FaceTime you, but I will never be somebody that's like out in public FaceTiming. I'm never going to be
FaceTime smoking a cigar. Yeah. I was just about to say like we could just do it like this, but then I realized we're indoors.
Yeah.
And I rent my place. You also rent, so that's not something that we should be doing. So fair enough. That's okay. I forgive you. And also, it's great.
The viewer doesn't think that my living room kitchen combo is not my house, my large house that I own.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
You think that this room with my son's bed and my chair that just sunk down is something that I own? Well, I own the chair. Anyway,
you own both chairs.
I do own both chairs. That's about it. Yeah, technically it's my wife's. Anyway, the point that you make is great, and it's reassuring because it's very similar. And one of the things that I had jotted down, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. What I do think is valuable for me to share as one of my points is kind of this like personal inventory. So like it's like a step one thing for me. Last week we talked about actionable takeaways. My step one was starting with self, loving self, then losing the victim mindset, and then so on and so forth. In this case, this like incorporating intention into my day-to-day to be successful for majority of the time for me to feel productive and like I can write my name on the day. It starts with this personal inventory, or you call it a life audit or whatever you want to do. And you can write it down. You can stew on it. I need to write these things down. One thing I'll share, and this will be helpful for any of my neurodivergent friends watching, but I found out in November I was diagnosed with ADHD. That did a lot for me, recognizing that there are things that I have thought my whole life that were just personality characteristics or character flaws or whatever you want to call them, that are really just symptoms of a disorder. So when you're approaching these things with neurotypical tips, like these time management tips that we say of like, well, do this, or time block, eat the frog, Pomodoro technique, that kind of stuff. And I teach it, like that's my job in my company is to teach that kind of stuff, but I can't apply it to myself is because I'm a neurodivergent brain trying to follow a neurotypical plan. So maybe something to consider if you're listening, you're like, man, I struggle with that all the time too. Do some research, but speak to a professional, please. Don't diagnose yourself. Anyway, the life audit, I write down, and it's these 8 different categories of your life, significant areas, your health, your finances, your personal development, your career, your relationships, your self-care, your home life, and your free time. So these are these 8 different pockets, similar to your, Ronnie, like the different roles in your Trello board that you're like, okay, how do I want to show up for these roles? Is like, what areas in my life, or what parts of these areas in my life do I need to change? What aspects of them can I tweak? Can I add to? Can I subtract from? Can I focus on more? And you create goals based off those things. So for example, my health, I have been below the weight that I'd like to be at for my whole life, since high school, I'll say. I would love to be maybe a solid like 20 pounds more than I am right now. What about my health is preventing that goal, right? So it's thinking like that. Well, and maybe for you is losing weight. So depending on what it is, what actions could you take now that you have this goal of like, okay, health, I want to gain 20 pounds. What actions could you take that you're not taking right now to put you in progress towards that, and then mapping out the habits that could stack towards you accomplishing those things. And again, so my example of gaining weight is like, well, I want to gain 20 pounds. Some things that I could do are eat more, because I know what I struggle with is remembering to eat throughout the day. How can you gain weight if you do not eat? Common sense. But what habits can I put in place, or what things can I engineer my environment around to make it very frictionless for me to accomplish the goal of remembering to eat? And it's things like leaving snacks out in places that I know I'm around, putting tons of reminders several times throughout the day to eat or to drink water or this or that. So take that for each category of your life, and then the areas are the things that you can do to make these habits stick. Those are the things that help you be more intentional. Because for me, I can say I want to do all these things, but then I get lost in the sauce of everything going on in my head. So I just get a ping on my phone 3 times a day to make sure I'm drinking water. And then I see that reminder and I look over and I have 3 water bottles set up because I did that the night before and I prepped for it. So it's those types of steps of maybe I'm not the best with remembering to do things, but if I'm intentional about taking, like you do on Sunday, an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is, to plot everything out, once that is done, and it feels painstaking to sit down for that amount of time and really map things out like that, but once it's done, that's all that space in your brain throughout the entire week that you no longer have to utilize. It's all done for you. And I think that is where it comes in handy big time. And really, that's kind of my big point all together as far as tools and rhythms is audit your life and the different aspects of it. Find out the areas of each part of your life that you want to improve, and then think about the goals you'd like to accomplish and what habits would feed into those goals. And really, it's just things like preparing the night before for the next day, reminders in your phone, sitting down on a Sunday and ripping your calendar apart for all the things, including leisure, including spending time with your family, right? Reference back the life audit and say, well, for my home life, I would love to spend more time with my wife. I would love to spend more time with my kids. Bake it into your schedule on Sunday, because I guarantee you, as humans on average are spending 2 hours on this thing, on our phone, that's 2 hours that you could say, okay, my calendar says from this time to this time, I'm spending time with my family. I know this is time that I'm usually scrolling. So now I'm taking that and I'm putting it to the side. And then you realize how much more time you have during the day. Yeah. So that's how intention has played a role so far in this year. And since I've kind of had this recognition or epiphany, thank you, of I need to get back in the driver's seat and stop being controlled by the stuff around me.
Yeah. I think we both do a version of the life audit. In fact, I got really, really burnt out at work around September of last year, or of September of 2023. And I looked at my manager. I was like, I need to take 3 days off and he was very gracious. My company's freaking amazing. They let me have the time that I needed, because I was like, I was at a wall, and I was you know
Yeah.
this feeling. You show up every Monday and you're like, I'm gonna do it. I'm over
Yeah.
it. Weekend was great. I'm ready to go. And then it's like by Monday at like 3:27 p.m. you're in tears at your cubicle, just like,
All your
I
hair
don't
is
have a
gray.
cubicle, but yeah. I'm 49 years old, and I'm actually not, but not that there's anything wrong with being 49 years old, but when
No,
you're
if you are
49 years old at
49,
26, yeah. So I sat down in a coffee shop for like 2 days in a row during those times off, and I just wrote like, what is my ideal mindset? Where is my mindset now in relation to that mindset? What is the gap that I need to fill? I did a gap analysis on my mindset and had to walk through what things bring me energy throughout the day, what things drain me. I went through this whole list, and it was kind of just like stream of consciousness. But I've put in my Trello board, I have this, guys, when I say I've been working on this system for 8 years, I mean it. Like, I'm going to reference this Trello board at times, and you're going to be like, what happens in this thing? My Trello board, my calendar is like the most weirdly, oddly, specifically put together thing that I have in my life.
I've been
But
taking notes. I'm like, I haven't had 8 years to do this, so
yeah,
this valuable.
bro. Yeah, I hope so. It's like the one thing I'm like a expert in my
And
opinion.
and it's eight. I hate to interrupt you, but it's 8 years of you doing this. But I don't have to spend 8 years putting
Yeah,
this together, because I'm listening to it and I'm like, oh, I could just go do that.
right,
You
right.
trial and error for us to hear it and be like, oh, okay, I can
Yeah.
implement that right away.
So at the start of the year, I come up with what are my rhythms for this year? Daily, what do I want to do? Weekly, what do I want to do? Monthly, quarterly, biannually. These biannual ones, they're important because they kind of keep me on track. On my birthday each year, what am I going to do? Or like, I'm very lucky, my birthday and Christmas, or my birthday and New Year's are pretty much exactly 6 months apart. So I'm able to have
Oh,
these like
cool. Yep.
biannual checkpoints. All of that to say, I think that most of the points that you and I were planning to make, Doug, today actually ended up being pretty, we covered them with our first point. I'll just say this really quickly. I think of intention as personal performance management. If you work as a manager, or you work as someone that reports to a manager, which you probably 99% of the chance you do, um, I've heard it described before as when you're a manager of people, you want to give people a very defined kingdom to which they have the keys. And then with every subsequent success, you give them a little bit more perimeter around their kingdom. I I do see there being danger in like looking at your life as this like overly corporatized thing, but I do think that there's something to be said about limiting your scope to really really small and manageable, where you can stack a lot of really quick wins, and then checking in with yourself, whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannually, or annually, and giving yourself a little bit more domain, right? I think this
Hmm.
is the way that you can look back. This is something I wish I would have done more of in that 8 year journey of figuring out how to kind of master my time a little bit more, is document. Say, hey, from January to March of 2024, I learned how to, I don't know, I worked on my S mount escape in jujitsu, right? And I documented my notes every time that I worked on it, because it was my goal. It was my athletic goal to get really good at escaping S mount in jujitsu, because I was getting my ass kicked. And now I can look back and I have a compendium of things that I did and thoughts that I had and feelings that I went through. There's this thing in psychology called the perspective bias, which is the inability for us to understand the emotions and the sensations of being in a physically or emotionally intense state when we're not experiencing it. So
Hmm.
when we're in these moments, we think, oh, I'm going to remember how painful this was for the rest of my life. And then you get out of it, and it's like you can't even begin to explain to someone how it felt, and you don't even remember how it felt.
Wow.
So it's like taking the intention to recognize that like the key to the next layer of the kingdom is the ability to explain how you expanded the perimeter, if that makes sense. So in the same way that your manager, if we're in a corporate environment, performance manages you and then says, hey, you know what? You did this really well. You did this okay, but I'm less worried about that because that's actually less important for where you're going next. And you did this other thing really well. So now part of your job responsibilities include X, and here's your promotion. I think that's a really helpful framework. Again, regardless of the dangers of looking at yourself as a purely corporate structure,
Yeah.
it is really, really helpful. It's been really helpful for me, at least as someone who struggles with a lot of imposter syndrome and self-doubt. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I've stacked the wins. If I'm going to doubt myself now, it would be through delusion that I would do so.
Right.
So
That's
my last point.
Yeah, that's a great last point on the imposter syndrome thing. I had a great conversation with someone today about that, and it was like debunking it. I said it to him, and I was like, "Whoa, where did that come from?" Because he was talking about his struggles with it, and he was like, uh, who am I to be in a room? Who am I to be speaking to like executives and like interviewing them and talking to them? Like, I'm this 30-year-old guy, haven't really lived a full life yet, in a room pretty consistently with people who are twice my age, twice my experience, so on and so forth. So it's these feelings of like, if I'm coming to the table with this, like, we have to be courageous and have intention and blah blah blah, people are going to look at me like, okay, they're going to test you and say, well, where's your courage, where's your intention, and all of that. So because of that, it's like, I don't want to come across like a hypocrite. And then he said it, we both actually kind of said it at the same time, that we were like, wait, but the whole thing about it is, that's what qualifies you,
Right.
is the fact that you struggle with those things. If you never had an issue with intention, or you never had an issue with courage, or you never had an issue with whatever it is, what would qualify you to speak on it? And that's when I was like, wait, so that's how you combat that imposter syndrome too, is like recognizing that it is my struggle with it that makes me qualified to speak on it. And I'm not a hypocrite. I'm human. There's no way
Right.
that I can constantly be perfect. So that's maybe just a little bonus tip there. But I think that
I love it.
takes us, so cool, right? And I think that takes us to a great place, which is the end of the episode. So if you've enjoyed everything that you've been listening to, then feel free to hit that subscribe button, please and thank you. Speaking on intention, this is something that, we've planned and put a lot of effort and energy into. I think to see the fruits of our labor from that little click of a button would mean a ton. But if you got value out of this, if you want to leave a comment somewhere down below, that'd be much appreciated. We'll link our Instagram.
I'd be impressed if you left a comment anywhere else, to be honest, if you find a way.
Honestly, yeah. If you sent me like a text message, that would be
Yeah.
above and beyond. I'd be like, how the hell did you find me? But comment down below. You can DM us on Instagram, intentionpod_, but we'll link it down in the description. And next week, we are going to be talking about this book that I haven't been reading, but I will start reading for next week. Our third recording of every month will be our kind of book club synopsis episode. And for this next week, we'll be talking about, it's backwards for me, but how to finish everything
It's
you
right
start.
for me.
Oh, okay, good. How to Finish Everything You Start, Habits to Transform Your Life by Jan Yeager. I've heard fantastic things about it. Understand what is behind your occasional or chronic reluctance to finish, so on and so forth. Stay tuned for that. But any closing remarks from you, Sir Ronnie, before we go on our merry way?
No, I've got nothing actually. This felt pretty good. Again, if something we said was valuable, or uh, maybe even better, if something we said you totally disagree with, give us a comment down below. We'd love to start engaging with you guys a little bit more. I mean, it's only episode 2, but I would absolutely love to start engaging with you guys a little bit more.
Right. Let's build a community out here. We're all trying to figure out the same thing, I think, which is how to make it in this world. But now that we have a better understanding of this word, I think our quote resonates, at least with me, 10 times more. And I hope it does for everyone else as well. And that is to find confidence in your intention and trust the process. So on that note, we will see you next week. Love you. Stay hanging in there. Take care of yourself. And we'll see you next time.
Toodles.